Rise of the Ronin is shaping up to be one of the most exciting open world games of the year. I got way more excited after doing a lot of research, like did you know that you can influence the main story by bonding with certain characters? Let's go over everything I learned, starting with the setting. So the game takes place in Japan during a very interesting time, the end of the 19th century. Also known as the Bakumatsu period, these years marked some huge changes to Japan, like the end of the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate and the end of the country locking its borders to any foreign trade or people. We play as a Ronin who works as a mercenary during this time, a character that is fully customizable by the way, as character creation has been confirmed for the game. In fact, a Famitsu interview with the developers mentions the character, also referred to as the Veiled Edge, as part of a duo. It also states each of the two main characters can be created separately and the player can choose which one to control to advance the story. We haven't seen that system in action yet, but we do know that our Veiled Edge will meet many historical figures that left their mark on history during the Bakumatsu period. One of the trailers shows us teaming up with Ryoma Sakamoto, who famously fought against the Tokugawa as part of the anti-shogunate forces. And we also get a glimpse of Matthew C. Perry, who was tasked with a mission to force the Japanese to open their ports to American trade, which eventually led to the end of the country's isolation. So again, a very interesting period to set your adventure in, but while there are a lot of important historical battles happening, I get the feeling that Rise of the Ronin story will be very character based. The reason for that is the bond system, which offers you optional quests for specific characters that can strengthen your bonds with them. So for example, in the most recent gameplay showcase, we see the player character helping out an inventor called Igashichi. This action strengthens your bond with him, and in turn he rewards you with the flame-throwing fire pipe. The more you strengthen your bond with this inventor, the more of his contraptions you'll have access to, and there are of course many more characters who you can form bonds with and earn rewards from. We'll totally be working on guides for the best of these rewards, so subscribe to not miss those and leave a like if you enjoyed the video so far. That Famitsu interview I mentioned earlier even notes you being able to bond with locations by the way, which I assume would be a town or a city, although we've seen no examples of this yet. But we do know bonds can influence the main story. Add to that the fact that the main quest will also contain important choices to make, and it really makes me believe this could be a pretty engaging story. At the very least, Rise of the Ronin will be a big departure from Team Ninja's usual stories, as unlike Wolong and Nioh, magic and mythological creatures will not be a part of Rise of the Ronin. But the biggest departure from the studio's usual formula is the fact that the game will feature an open world. From interviews, we know that the map features three major cities: Kyoto, Edo, and Yokohama, which is the city from the recent gameplay showcase. The areas in between are full of bandits to fight and opportunities for side quests, and the devs did stress that their goal is not just to create a wide open world, but to create an open world with a higher density of play. Considering it's their first proper attempt at an open world, I'm curious to see how this works out. Sounds like not a lot of empty space and a lot of things going on both inside and outside the cities, which sounds very promising. And because Rise of the Ronin is an open world game, you can of course expect some traversal options to make travel a bit quicker. You'll have a horse, which is pretty standard, although I did spot you are able to use a sub-weapon, which I'm guessing is a ranged weapon, while you are mounted. Much more interesting, however, is the avicula, a lightweight set of wings that can be instantly deployed at any moment to transition into a glide. Pair this with your grappling hook that you can use to quickly ascend up a building, and you can then directly go into a glide and fly around the city that way. You can also fly, call on your horse and drop on horseback from the sky, which looks very cool, or use your wings to set up an aerial assassination. So a multi-purpose tool really, and the same is true for your grappling hook, because while you can use it to traverse the environment, you can also use it during combat to close the distance, grab an object to throw it at a target, or even in stealth to pull an enemy closer so you can take them out. And that's just a small part of the combat sandbox, which looks very in-depth and varied. As a Ronin, you obviously have access to a katana, which is already a versatile weapon thanks to the stance system. Like in Nioh and Wolong, weapons have access to different stances, and if the system is similar to those games, it gives you access to a slow but hard-hitting stance, a faster, more agile style, and a style that offers a middle ground between those two. No matter your stance though, you will need to pay close attention to enemy stamina as well as your own. Stamina is consumed when performing or blocking attacks, although if you time your block right and parry an attack, you will restore stamina instead. Should you reduce an enemy's stamina to 0, they become vulnerable to a special attack with your grappling hook, as you can see by this icon, which is different from a finisher that can be performed when an enemy's health turns red, as you can see here. So that's the base mechanics, but as I said, there is a lot more at play. For starters, you won't be limited to just using a katana. Spears are also available as weapons, and I'm assuming they will offer different stances as well, and you also have access to ranged firearms to hit enemies from a distance. Weapons with the bayonet provide an interesting middle ground where you can quick fire at enemies and use the blade on the rifle to parry incoming attacks. Likewise, pistols can be used in the offhand to fire some quick shots in between sword strikes, and I'm guessing the same is true for the shurikens you can see on the HUD. So in combat, you will always have a way to change your fighting style, close the distance to an enemy, and use some quick ranged attacks while wielding a melee weapon. That's just talking about regular weapons though, because the game setting also allows for some more experimental weapons like the fire pipe you get from the inventor. This flamethrower allows for sustained damage over longer ranges, and I'm guessing Igashichi has more tools for us to unlock. We also know you have the ability to set your sword on fire, so again you have a ton of tools and moves to take out your enemies, who are no slouches themselves, as even without the addition of mythical creatures, there's a pretty big variety in the enemies you'll be fighting. Some of them will also have access to more technologically advanced weapons like the fire pipe, but there are also these big wrestler type guys that use hand-to-hand combat to take you out. And then there's this man who reminds me of the long-arm centipede miniboss from Sekiro, including his rapid chain of claw attacks. And being familiar with Team Ninja's previous work, I'm especially excited for the challenging bosses and mini-bosses that we no doubt have to face. I'm also guessing these will offer you some form of reward for beating them, but the truth is, loot is one thing we still know very little about. From the game's pre-order bonuses, we know there will be different armor sets to equip, but the devs have stressed that armor isn't that important and that you can freely combine items to create your own style. However, while not as loot driven as Nioh, there will be RPG elements that allow for build crafting in the game. Part of that will also come from the various skills we're able to unlock for our character, which is also something we don't know that much about. One interesting thing we do know, however, is that there are two separate resources for upgrading. One is called Karma, and as you'd expect from the Souls-like roots of the developer, these are lost upon death, with presumably the ability to regain them by coming back to the place you died at. But the other one, which we don't have a name for yet, is not lost on death, so even if you find yourself dying repeatedly, you are still earning resources that allow your character to become stronger. And you are going to need those upgrades because, make no mistake, Rise of the Ronin will be a challenging game. You will be able to tailor that difficulty, however, as the game will also offer 3 difficulty options. The lowest one really allows you to focus on the narrative and unlock a new set of settings that allows you to modify things like the amount of stamina an attack consumes. The middle difficulty will offer a balanced amount of challenge, whereas the highest one will offer you the tough combat associated with Souls-like games. You really have to pay attention to attack and parry windows here, which is something I love, but it's nice to know you can change the difficulty at any given time should things prove too difficult. And while we don't have footage of it yet, you can also make things easier for yourself by calling in a co-op buddy, which according to the FAQ is available for story missions and supports up to 4 players. So sounds like you won't be able to explore the open world with a buddy, and PvP will also not be a thing, at least not at launch. And we will be making a ton of videos on the game when it releases on March 22nd, so subscribe to not miss those, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and watch our previous one on the biggest games coming out in 2024 by clicking on the screen. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.